that's what I've been working on during this period that we are in. Um, I do know the words. I just not completely comfortable with chord changes yet, and I also have taken to, perhaps because it's just been practicing the music without the words. I've taken a liking to just the instrumental version, and but again, clearly not. But that's what I've been using. Part of what I've been using my time for. Not a huge portion of every day, but every day, um, which is probably the most that I've ever practiced an instrument consistently. And I have learned many instruments in my time. Um, and I thought I'd play some of the chords, well, all the chords, not very many chords. I've learned G's my favorite, and F is my least favorite, and D minor are also ones that I don't love, but that's because I guess I'm getting better at them. And the point of this is, feels strange to be doing this. Feels strange to be doing anything but strange. Feels strange to be doing this, just as one of the things that I'm giving my time to right now. But on the other hand, consistency across from normalcy to pandemic and then back to normalcy, I would have done this anyway, and there's no reason for me not to do it. Try to adapt it to the situation that we're in. So again, I heard repeatedly anybody can learn to play the guitar, and I have doubted that I'm part of that anybody, but this has shown me that I potentially could be. I won't necessarily play guitar every time. I think I've said that before on one of these videos, but I made actual progress, and so I wanted to share, and maybe I'll feel like sharing it another time. And I also figure, as long as this is one of the things that I do and one of the things that I want to keep doing, despite the strange circumstances, it's always been essentially about recommending ways to spend time, because it's always been about books. I've got a stack of books here, and what better time for books than you can't do, well, you can. People are finding ways through Zoom and other social media ways, but for the most part, you can't do traditionally communal things. But books are, they are solitary, and now is a time to be solitary. And so, I got books to recommend in your solidarity. And also kinds of books, I suppose, would be the theme that I'll be going for. These are books that I have read over the past month, as usual. A couple of them are themed, and one of them is an old friend that you will recognize. First book that I read this month is this book. It's not the sun, but I got a very bright light going. I took the hood off of a lamp, so it's just the bulb, which is good for lighting, but not so good for things that are reflective like book covers. But anyway, I have always thought of Maya Angelou as above me, as like one of those authors who I could never begin to hope to understand, and thus I never gave her a shot. And when I finally did, with, I think, the Maya Angelou book to give her a shot with, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, I found that I not only understood it, but I could identify with some things, and it was just an all-around very positive reading experience, and I know that I'm the nth person to figure out that it's great to read Maya Angelou, but I speak from the perspective of someone who was afraid and then jumped in and did it. And this is the first of, I think, there's a total of, I don't remember if it was 5 or 7 memoirs covering the course of her life. This is the very beginning, and it's beautiful and terrifying, alternately, and just the feel of the voice that she uses throughout grows with her. There's one part, I won't say specifically which part, but there's one part where she kind of jumps out of the 8-year-old girl, and it's very clearly from an adult perspective. But for the most part, when she's writing about when she was 8, she sounds like she was 8. Not like an 8-year-old could write this way, but I thought that I felt like I was hearing it from an 8-year-old. So, again, there's time, and this is actually, again, Maya Angelou, I thought it'll take me forever to even get through the book because it'd be so dense and intimidating, and it didn't. It was a breeze to read. It's almost 300 pages, but it didn't feel like it. A lot of people have this on their bookshelf so that it's there, but they don't necessarily, so that people see that it's there. But take it down and read it. I have been, for what few regular viewers there are, will already know, but I've been, of course, sitting here for the most part lately and reading from out of copyright public domain texts. At least I hope they all are. And it's been just something to contribute in a way. I like to listen to things as I fall asleep. I like to listen to things as I'm doing work here or there. Mostly I use podcasts or YouTube videos, and I rarely actually listen to books because I prefer to read the books. But I know some people who like to listen to books, and so there are versions of The Woman in White out there. There are versions of The Wizard of Oz, which is the one that I posted earlier tonight or last night, when I'm gonna put this video up from that perspective. Last night, read it just a few hours ago. But I put one more, and and if you're a fan of these things, sometimes you like to get different voices doing the same familiar text. I do appreciate that sort of thing. Well, with musicals, I like an original Broadway cast, and then I like the revival cast, and I like to hear the different way people do the songs. So think of me as an off Broadway version of chapter whatever of The Woman in White, chapter I think it was 7 or 8 of The Wizard of Oz, or Dracula's Guest from this book here, which is just off screen, or The Mask of the Red Death from Edgar Allan Poe here. I think I like this corner for doing the videos. I think it's got the best background because it's got the cat and the owl, the flowers, the thyme tree, the menorah, and the thickest of my books. And thick books, I'll use that as a transition. Thick books are good for now. I started this in January and just finished it, I think, about a week ago. And it's a thick book. And I didn't know at the time that I started it in January that I might be entering a period of time when an almost 800-page biography would be a desirable thing to have. Not just for me, an avid reader, but for everybody. And I know people are still ordering things online, so this is a thick book, and I'll have my blog post in the thing below, along with other relevant blog posts. You can order this book. You can order the soft cover. It won't be an advanced uncorrected proof, but it will be pretty much the same text, I'm assuming. All the great pictures, including this one on the cover. He was the most photographed person of the 19th century, and I think a small fraction of the photographs are in here, and there are a ton of photographs in here of him. And some of them are really, really, I mean, they're all beautiful, but some of them are really interesting. Like, oh, he was there. And, oh, that's his environment, his library, his study. Frederick Douglass, the place where Frederick Douglass lived. It humanizes him. I've spoken, or I've written about how he's kind of a mythological figure, like so many historical figures are. And this, and his own memoir, Life and Times, doesn't, I mean, you get a sense of the human, but it doesn't really humanize, if that makes sense. Whereas, because he's selecting what is included in his and how his story is told, so it's still kind of a incomplete and more perfect than it otherwise would be picture. This is what wrinkles there were in addition to that, and a lot of really interesting stuff. And I wasn't going to start it right away, having just finished doing this a couple pages at a time, but I've got the Ron Chernow biography of Alexander Hamilton that inspired the Lin-Manuel Miranda musical over there, and I'm thinking of starting chipping away at that, in addition to all the other books. I have a lot of books. That blog post is going to be linked to below there. One of my best titles of the year, I think, so far, Stay the Book Home. But yes, big, thick books. If you have them, and you've always, like, there's a book, A Brief History of Just About Everything by Bill Bryson, that I kind of wish I had now. My dad has it. I've always planned to read it, and I wish I had it right now, but I don't. I have a lot of nice thick books up here. Many of them I have already read, but if I should run out of stacks of paperbacks that were going to be, I thought, more than enough for the next couple of months, if I run out of them, I have a lot of big thick books to turn to. That over there. And next, I tend to read in themes, at least lately. But the oldest theme is probably dates back, and this article will be in there too. Blog post, dates back the longest, because when I started dating, not just when I started dating this person, but when I started dating, she was my first. She was, to put it cutely, more Christian than I was, which is to say I was not at all. I had maybe by that point I had definitely seen Godspell. I saw it at one of my neighbor's churches, and I might have seen not the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, but the filmed version of the 2001 revival, or somewhere in the 2000. It wasn't 2001. It might have been 2000. And there was a filmed version of it, and I might have seen that by this time. But if I hadn't, then I definitely got it because she was worried that I was going to go to hell for not believing in God, and she kind of got me a little bit worried. Not that worried, but a little bit worried. And so, but I also, she wanted to make her happy. And so, for Lent, the first year that we were together, leading up to Easter, of course, as Lent does, I gave up being an atheist for Lent, and I acted Christian. And that's not what I do anymore, but the Lenten season, I give it the theme of, if I have them, Christian themed, or maybe even all religion, but mostly Christian themed books. And I do that to this day, and I happen to have two this year. The Last Temptation of Christ, with you can't see the title or Nikos Kazantzakis' name, but you can see the very beautiful illustration on the cover, and Rock Opera, which is essentially a biography of Jesus Christ Superstar the musical, written by a couple of guys who may have been there the whole time, just hiding in the background and interviewing people. That's the sense that I got, that they were reporting from the ground. Um, Now, Jesus Christ Superstar is my favorite version of the Jesus story. Um, this might be my second favorite. I don't know. It's not my favorite story overall, and I have a real problem with uh, the fact that both that Mary Magdalene is consistently portrayed as a prostitute in the non-Bible versions of the Jesus story, even though she's not portrayed as a prostitute in the Bible version of the Jesus story that all the non-Bible versions are based on, and that's just I have trouble with that, and also the fact that it's a better story with her as a prostitute, even though she shouldn't be a prostitute. Um, but and you can check my facts on that. It's not just spew and Da Vinci Code propaganda. That is actually the case. Da Vinci Code was right about that, if maybe not about other things. I recently rewatched the movie version of the Da Vinci Code. And if you're on the fence about the movie version of the Da Vinci Code, one, you've got time, so read the book. Two, but also Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen is the reason to watch that movie. Everyone else too, but Ian McKellen especially. So, Jesus books. Listen to cast recordings. Watch. There are 2 movie versions of this. That could take up some time. And this is 400 pages, and it's not a breeze like the Maya Angelou book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It's more of a slog. It's good. The language is wonderful, and I credit both Nikos Kazantzakis and, where's the name of the translator? Nikos Kazantzakis chose the initial words, he put them in order, he gave the feel, but then, of course, the translator, whose name must be in here, my fingers are dry, P.A. Bien translated the Greek into English, and he chose the words to represent the words that Nikos Kazantzakis chose, so they both get credit for how beautiful this book is. This is a more clumsy book, and it is very quote-heavy, but still interesting if you're interested in the musical or musical theater, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Tim Rice history in general, or if you've got some time on your hands and you have access to it. It's another thing to read. Don't fall down. And my last, I'll save that for last because I'm currently reading this book, Inventing Japan. This is a particularly shiny book, so we'll see if I can get a good shot of it, by Ian Buruma. And I got this book shortly after I played Kayama Izaimun, the samurai, in Pacific Overtures. And I know you've got some questions now, because I just said what I just said, and you heard it correctly, and the answers are in another blog post down below from Onstage blog that I wrote a couple of years back. And I will also link to it when I write a blog post about this. I just don't want to talk about it right at the moment. Because I reread that tonight, and it's quite good, and it says everything that I want to say, and so I don't want to botch that. I just want to provide the words that I already picked out. All I'll say is that it wasn't my idea. But so this is about Japan's history from 1853, when Pacific Overtures takes place, when Commodore Perry sailed to Japan from America and opened it up, to 1964. That's where the book opens, actually, with the Olympics. And I found that opening interesting. And I find the book interesting, but especially after that Frederick Douglass biography that I will not hoist again, 770 some pages about a single guy, and this is more than 100 years of a country's history, and it's a fraction of the size. Maybe if I'd read it back then, when I got it, when I intended to read it, because I was curious for more history of what I just learned about Japan and Japanese culture and the opening of Japan, etc. That's why I wanted this back then. But now I've been spoiled by that wonderful biography of Frederick Douglass. Again, 770 pages on a single person. that this just seems insufficient. It's probably a good primer, but I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I want the 800-page version of this book. Because it goes from historical figure to historical figure, event to event, and I don't really, like, I lived with Frederick Douglass for months. I'm not feeling like I'm even visiting Japan. I'm feeling like I might have gotten more at the Japanese pavilion at Disney World when I was one of the last guests at Disney World before it shut down temporarily. So if you have this book, it's one more thing to read. But if you don't have it, I don't know. Again, maybe it supplements your interest in Japan. In which case, go for it. I certainly hope somebody else wants it, because I'm going to get rid of it, and I want it to find a good home, like I do all of my books. I want all of my books to find a good home, including this one, which I long thought that I would keep because it's such a nice presentation. It's got historical pictures and other, I guess that's the flag of Oz, and all this annotation that I guess I once thought, maybe this is just the first copy of The Wizard of Oz that I found at a library sale, and that's why I got it. The Kalidas. Now, that's not how they are described in the book. They're described in the book not with the striped legs. They're described, they got the body is a bear, and then the heads are the tigers, and that looks like a tiger wearing a bear dinner jacket and bare feet. But, yeah, and then it's got these wonderful pictures, and I did love the book. I love the text. It's not, revolutionary literature, but it's beautiful to read. It was interesting. I've seen so many versions of the story. Movies. I found that DVD one of the last visits to a library sale, and I was worried that it wouldn't work, but it worked very nicely. So I thought it's one of those I thought I knew the story, which is actually the tagline, I think, for Wicked, the prequel, by Gregory Maguire, I think it's his name. And then Steve Schwartz wrote the musical with Stephanie Holtzman. I think those are their names. This is probably the first version that I found at a library sale. That's why I bought it. But it's one of those, I thought I knew the story, and then I read the book. The Wicked Witch of the West is barely in the book. And Dorothy meets the Witch of the North in the beginning of the book, but then the Witch of the South at the end of the book. And without giving too much away, anybody who's confused why, when Dorothy reunites with the Witch of the North at the end of the movie, why she didn't give a certain key piece of information. I don't know why I'm pretending anybody cares about spoilers for The Wizard of Oz. Everybody knows this, but still, why she didn't give Dorothy a key piece of information when she met her at the beginning of the movie. In the book, it's a different witch who doesn't necessarily know that information. So it makes a lot more sense. It's still a wonderful movie, though. And The Wiz, also great movie. We watched that directly after The Wizard of Oz. And another great movie. And another great version of The Wizard of Oz. But I will be not keeping this. It is big, and I found that I wanted to read the text of the book. I didn't want to read the annotation. I loved looking at the pictures, but I didn't read the captions. I want to read the history of the Wizard of Oz and L. Frank Baum separately from reading the Wizard of Oz. So one day I hope to get a nice biography of him. But as for now, eventually I will hopefully get a good price for this. Or I'll find some friend or somebody who the Wizard of Oz means a lot to them, and they will want this, and I'll just give it to them. But for now, all of these books and a couple of DVDs and Trumpet are just waiting, and I don't know how many books I'm going to have when the time comes to contribute them or try to sell them. And I don't know who's going to be taking them. I was talking to my mom earlier today, and she's talking about how she had a bunch of these bags of clothes and shoes ready before the quarantine started, and now she's not sure when those sorts of things are going to be acceptable. And shoes and clothes, they were going to wash anyway. I think that's how it works. I think they get them, and I think they wash them before they put them out, just in case. but nobody thinks to sanitize books and DVDs, and that's what I'm offering. Um, I sanitize them when I bring them back here, pandemic or not, um, but you never know. So eventually, these books and so many others will leave the apartment, but might not be for months. Um, I was thinking, I wonder if those guys who set up tables of books on Broadway, I wonder if they have clearance or license or whatever for that, or if I can just take a table out and set up books and DVDs and sell them to people directly rather than giving them to a library sale or to a used bookshop. I'm at 27 minutes. I think that's long enough. I wish I had more to contribute to the solution to the problem, but at least right now I don't. I can play a little music, although I understand some people got in trouble for performing that song on social media. So I don't know. I hope you liked it. And I can recommend books, and I do recommend books, especially because even if you have someone to share this quarantine with, you won't always, if you're most people, I guess, if you won't always want to be spending time with that person, and a book is a great way to spend a time alone, like just in your head. I think I perhaps mentioned that about most of these, that this one, in my head, it was me, and Maya Angelou was talking directly to me, and she was an 8-year-old, but then she was a 16-year-old eventually. Different Maya Angelou's spoke to me in my head through this book. Books as long as Frederick Douglass and The Last Temptation of Christ gave me a real sense of being there, reading them to myself in my head. So I can recommend books. I can tell you what I'm planning to read over the next month. I probably will start the Alexander Hamilton biography, maybe 5 or 10 pages at a time. I'm not in a great hurry. But also Trapp Family Singers by Maria Augusta Trapp. That's the book that inspired The Sound of Music. Or maybe The Sound of Music, the stories inspired The Sound of Music. I don't know, because I haven't read it yet, so I don't know the timeline on the book, musical movie thing. The Secret History of Wonder Woman, The Perfect Storm, Zone 1 by Colson Whitehead, Foxfire by O'Connor, I think is the last name. I don't know. Oates, Joyce Carol Oates. Colson Whitehead and Joyce Carol Oates, 2 authors who were on my mind at the Brooklyn Book Festival, because I was like, eventually I have to read books by these people, but I haven't found the right one, which is to say, one at a book sale type thing. But then I found them both, I think, at the same book stand at the Brooklyn Book Festival. So there's that. Now I'm closing in on 30 minutes. So stay in, stay safe, wash your hands. I think the last time I did a video like this, not reading, I touched my face a lot, and you'll notice I didn't do that, or maybe I just don't realize that I did do it. But anyway, don't touch your face, do wash your hands, and stay safe and stay home, but also eventually just step outside and get some fresh air. Or if you, I don't have a yard here, but if you have a yard, go out in the yard and maybe garden a little bit. And also another thing that actually no, because it hasn't been published on Onstage Blog yet, but I wrote for Onstage Blog, and hopefully they publish it soon, a thing about how parodying the coronavirus by way of musical theater show tunes has been a way to make it less scary. It's like what Mel Brooks often says about why he parodied Hitler. If you make it so that you're laughing at it, and it's less terrifying and it's less scary. It takes a little bit of the power away. So find a song that you like and see if you can write funny lyrics about COVID-19, coronavirus, to the tune of that song, or just insert it. It's kind of like a Twitter game where you insert a word into a title or something, but make it funny, make it less scary, because it is scary, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to consume you with its scariness. You can take a little of the power away. And before I go, I'll just show, I've shown Phantom Bear before, I think, when I was doing the decorations, but this is where, see if I can get, without this is where Phantom Bear lives most of the year, in this little picture frame, and I'm hopeful I'm going to maybe draw a background for him at some point, but this is where he lives most of the year, on this shelf here, with other bears, like a bear there, bear there. I just nudged my cactus. Yeah, now I'm just rambling. So, all the things that I said about the books, all the things that I said about how to, not that I'm an expert on how to deal with the coronavirus, but I'm just repeating the things that the experts have said, and all the things that I played on the guitar, all that stuff. And if all of that stuff, failure is impossible.